Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News Podcast. My name is James Dickson, and as always, I wish you a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you tune in to today's podcast from. And we're talking festivals on today's podcast, and more specifically, brands and their presence at festivals, and what they may need to be thinking about, how they need to be approaching their brand activations at festivals. It all sounds a bit vague, as it always does at the start of this podcast, because things always become clearer when I bring in the actual brains behind these podcasts, which is always our guest. And I'm delighted to say that our guest today is a first-time podcaster, somebody who has not just not been on the Event Industry News podcast, but not been on any podcast, which I always find surprising nowadays. But nonetheless, he is very, very welcome. Mr. Adam Goodman is the managing director for ACA Live and joins us this morning. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, James. Thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And for a first-time podcast, that's a very pro setup, loud and clear.
Thank
We're
you.
getting
I've had
this
some
morning.
help.
Yeah, well, a pleasure to have you aboard on the podcast. And as I said loosely at the start, brands and their presence at festivals. This is something that has become commonplace. Anybody who has been to a festival, worked at a festival, will know the value of brands and their participation in festivals, the revenue streams that they bring, and of course the opportunities that they are afforded as a brand with the audiences that they can interact with. We're very much going to be sort of looking at what they may be able to do and some of the experiences that you've got professionally of working with those brands at your own events. But let's backtrack a little bit first of all. And as a first-time guest on the podcast, why don't we just give a little perspective as to what ACA Live do, who they are, how you started it, a bit of background there.
Yeah, thanks, James. So, well, I'm Adam, and we are a brand experience and creative production agency, and we've been going for about 13 years, and I've been in the industry forever. I did a degree at Leeds in hospitality business management, and it was there that I fell in love with the events industry when I was on a placement at the Langham Hotel, and I worked in conference and banqueting. I didn't really enjoy the hotel side. I really enjoyed the event side, and that was me. I was hooked on events, and it was everything from the production to the creative to the logistics, all of it. This combination of pulling stuff together and then seeing it through. And we work across a broad sector of clients. We have quite a few drinks clients that we do events for. Our core business is creating experiences that enable brands and businesses to engage with their audiences, whether that's consumers or employees. And it's all about the experience and that connection.
And when we talk about the experience and the connection, historically, and I'm not suggesting that no thought has gone into this in the past, because of course it has, but it could, the spectrum of quality in terms of the activation that you would see from brands at any given event varied quite dramatically, didn't it? It could be a couple of people stood in branded baseball caps trying to hawk goodie bags into people's hands as they walk past, and those people doing the dance of sort of running away from them or grabbing it and looking at it and realizing, oh, I don't really need anything that's in here. What do I do with it now? And of course, it can range up to the spectacular as well. Are we trying to push maybe a more consistent approach to this, or is there quite a major rethink that needs to happen, having had this sort of 2-year reset where festivals didn't operate? Has it been a good opportunity to maybe take a step back and for the brands that you work with to really rethink how they activate themselves at these events?
Well, I think fundamentally the principles are the same. I think it's really important to really understand who your audience are and what it is that they that they like doing. And I think the key things really is I think you want to when you come to these events, you come as fans. The brand should come as fans as opposed to just marketeers. And I think that's really important, that you sort of bring yourself to these experiences and really understand and what it is that the consumers are looking for, and don't shove things down people's throats. I think it's just a very considered, insightful approach to how you deliver activations.
And I suppose there will be a level of fundamental processes that any brand would go through, but how greatly does it vary depending on the type of brand, depending on what they're ultimately attempting to push? I think of something, fairly common at a festival, for example, like a drinks brand. Is it just about opening up a fancy looking pop-up bar and having some people stood with trays and samples? Is it very much about getting the drink into the people's hands? How would they go about approaching it?
Well, no. It's about knowing your audience. I think it's making sure you go firstly to the right festivals where your audience are going to be, because it's a fantastic opportunity. But I think what you're able to do is engage with people in a very, very relaxed, chilled surroundings, and I think what you need to be doing is adding value to their experience as opposed to just shoving stuff in their face. And I think that certainly with drinks and food, sampling is key. We've very much believe that there's this term liquid to lips, certainly with drinks brands, and that's the tried and tested way of getting people to buy a product is for them to try it.
Yeah.
But you have to come up with clever ways of doing that. And I think in my view, gone are the days of just standing there and handing out samples. There has to be a story to it. There has to be a reason why they're coming. Don't ram it down their throats. Let them discover this brand as the brand's personality as well, and not just standing there with, as I said, just handing out samples with no context to it.
I remember a podcast, probably from 4, maybe 5 years ago now, and I forget who the guest was. So apologies if this lady is listening and you go, "Oh, that was me that said that." Please tweet us and remind us. But it was somebody who said that festivals are so much more family orientated now, regardless of the content of them. You see so many more parents bringing their kids to festivals, which is a great thing. And her suggestion was that with all these fantastic food stalls that you have now, and artisan producers, and the wealth of option that we have for food, that she wants to see a stall that just does boiled pasta and ketchup for kids. Well, because they could be so fun. And she said the first operator to go into the festival market that just sells boiled pasta and ketchup for a couple of quid for kids, for parents with kids, because that's all they'll eat, would be great. And the reason I bring that into the conversation is because when you talk about giving them the experience and adding to their experience, is it also about identifying what some of the pain points are for people going to festivals? And in that instance, families with young children, what are the pain points of going to a festival? Yes, you have a great time, but if you've got young children, they'll want cold drinks, they will want eating, they'll probably want things a little bit more frequently than an adult would. Is it about brands looking at the audience and opportunities like that and saying, actually, we could offer something for the children that would help enhance the experience of the parents?
Yes, it depends on what the brand is. I think, if we're talking about drinks brands in particular, there's always been this question: do drinks brands go to turn up at festivals where there's lots of kids? And it's always an interesting dilemma, because yes, there'll be lots of kids there, but your target market is also there, the parents. But I think trying to align, we would avoid trying to align appealing to children with a specific drinks brand. I think that's just of course that we've done. But I think identifying pain points is absolutely is what should be done. I mean, there's very interestingly, Co-op now are doing a click and collect service at 3 or 4 festivals, which I think is great. And years ago, I think EE did a charging bull station where they had sort of these Wi-Fi hotspots around, and Hunter Wellies, this sort of shoe amnesty. Bring us your shoes and we'll give you a pair of wellies. All of these little things I just think are really, really smart. And you don't have to. You don't have to go big. You just got to really just consider, think about. You are a consumer yourself. What do you, what is it that you would want at a festival?
I alluded to this sort of reset period, the downtime that we all had, where live events weren't taking place. And I've spoken to many organizers, agencies who, really took advantage of that, because, in normal times, we're all working at 100 miles an hour. you know, the events come thick and fast, you know, and we will all have, you know, it will go like that throughout the year. And in the quieter periods, we're busy planning, and then we're delivering it again. Were you afforded that with that sort of luxury of time, the chance to really think about how you were going to work with clients as as an agency and as an organizer? Did you actually do a bit of reset yourselves as a business?
Not hugely, because we were busy dealing with the challenges that our clients had during the pandemic, which was how can we engage with our audiences when no one can go out, and so we were busy doing that. But I think, you know, what we have seen is the appetite for festivals now is crazy, and we're finding that when we're speaking to the organizers who are hitting their targets and then some with sponsors.
Right.
You know, they're really there's just the appetite. You know, people just want to get out. They forget very, very quickly, and they want to get out. And brands who unfortunately had to be relatively quiet for 2 years are now out there and really, really want to go for it. And some, I think, will be more considered. Some will really think about the experience, and others will just think, want visibility. I want visibility. I want to go where the people are. We've been quiet for 2 years. Let's get there. And I don't think that will change. I just think, you know, but I think but as consumers, we are dying for rich engagement and fun, you know, things to do.
Well, when you use the phrase rich engagement, we're sort of very closely aligned with our friends over at the Event Tech Live event, and a shout out to Adam Parry in the Event Tech talk show that he does, our sister podcast. When it comes to sort of technology and bringing tech into the equation, how has that developed, and what are brands sort of doing now to sort of bring some of the technological developments that are available to them into their activation plans?
I think tech is really, really interesting. It's something that, you know, we talk about as an agency, and how can we integrate it? Should we integrate it? And I've always been a firm believer of don't use tech just for the sake of it, because especially, and I think a lot of people were perhaps trying to do that over the last couple of years. Now, a lot of this tech's already been there, but it was just brought to the front as a result of the recent pandemic. And I think, you know, tech at festivals, that, you know, one of the challenges you've got is internet connectivity and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to be very, very careful with how you use it. I think the use of QR codes is really interesting. And again, wasn't something that was new. It's just kind of come back, and it was always, in my view, a no-brainer in terms of being able to track and engage with your consumers and see how they behave afterwards. You know, you can incentivize people at these festivals, give them a QR code, see how they behave once they've experienced your product at a festival or experienced something at a festival. And I think the use of that is really, really interesting. And then obviously you've got all the social media stuff and the photo booths and the photo technology that's utilized at events. And so look, I'm of the view, just don't use it for tech for the sake of it. For me and us as an agency, it's always been about, look, what are you trying to do? What's the content? And then find the right solution for that, whether that be tech-based or whether it just be actors engaging, you know, whether it be something. And I think that for me is a really important approach to sort of delivery.
I'm not sure sort of how much detail you could offer into this sort of next question or discussion point, but on the subjects of social media, we, I suppose, going back 10 years, really had, you know, 2 or 3 obvious options. You know, Facebook maybe when Twitter started to allow, you know, promoted posts and things like that, but the various different platforms that are now available, of those, how closely do you work with clients to identify whether or not the demographic of the audience at a particular event is going to be relevant to a particular social media platform, or if it's not? Is the thinking to still do them all, or is it very much actually no, let's take a look at which ones we think are likely to be the ones most utilized by the audience that we're targeting?
Yeah, look, we don't specialize in in social media, and we work with digital agencies to support us with that, and we're always talking about clients, the best way to amplify what it is we're doing, whether it's pre or on site. And I think there is a strategy to it. It's identifying where but it the strategy for where you turn up is also intrinsically linked to the platforms that you would use anyway. So I think you're right. There are some some groups will use Twitter, some will use Facebook, some Instagram. TikTok, I think, is a really interesting platform. It's quite young at the moment, but I think there are more and more brands are seeing the value in it. And I think from what I gather, it's getting a bit more momentum. And I know some brands are a bit nervous about using it, but I think we may see that used a bit more with brands in the future.
Well, when it comes to the physical manifestation of a brand's presence at a festival, you said that there is this real desire, and that festivals and events that you work for and with have met their targets and exceeded those targets. How are those brand activations and presences at festivals manifesting themselves physically in terms of the production that is planned to go on site? We are recording this for context of anybody who is listening in future on the 23rd of May. So we are sort of just on the precipice of the summer event season. The Jubilee's around the corner. What are you seeing on site that's coming onto site this year?
Well, there's some really, I think there's a big mix. There's a big mix of sort of programmed content combined with just very, very big. Here's a really, really big bar with lots of presence, and we'll do lots of little things around here. And there'll be I saw some of these really, really huge brands. And then there's some that, again, we're working with a number of brands where we're doing some really engaging sort of one-on-one experiences, and really quite immersive, and others where it's it's just a really lovely place to come and chill, but we're going to enhance a lot of people are going to festivals for music, and so we will program, and we're creating. I've always believed that certain brands that we work with, we should be creating this a destination for them to come to.
Sure.
And so we're creating, we're programming stage with amazing DJs and amazing drinks. And so I guess it's just there's a whole sort of raft of activations that are being delivered.
And when it comes with the DJ side of things, that's an interesting one, because without being cliched about it, certain drinks, certain types of drinks, you would maybe associate with certain types of music, and that there's a careful sort of curation process maybe that could and maybe does already take place, in terms of what type of music are we going to play to be associated with this particular drink, because that very much, music sets a mood, doesn't it? It sets a tone of an area and environment. Is that something that you will work closely with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because but I think even before you've got to that, you have identified the festival as having the right demographic of people, but also the right genre of music, the right style of I suppose the right vibe for that festival will fit the brand. And again, when you're working with festivals, if we're programming our activation, we have to work very closely with the festival organizers to make sure that it's aligned with what they're doing, and it doesn't sort of conflict. So I think again, some of our brands are very closely aligned in music culture, and really want to enhance that. And so it is kept, the roster that we've got in is carefully curated for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. How has the sort of this demand for sponsorship opportunities at events and live events changed your own operations? Have you had to expand your team? Has it resulted in an increased workload for you guys? Does it have that knock-on effect?
No, not massively. We've always had a very strong core team, and then as and when we need to, we would flex up. So the team that we've got are very good at juggling
Mhm.
But we've got a lot of experience in festivals, and also we won't overstretch ourselves. So we make sure that we've got the right people to deliver the right projects, and we also have a whole sort of a big black book of freelance resource that we can call upon when we get to those pinch points on site, because it does, as you probably know, when you're having worked on festivals, it does require a certain type of person, a certain skill to be able to operate effectively, I think, on festival sites.
Yeah.
You just need to know what you're doing. You need to know what to look out for from a delivery perspective, but also from a consumer perspective. And I think you've got to really enjoy that as well. It's long hours, and there is a lot of walking from where you're staying to the activation. So I mean, we're very fortunate. I've got a fantastic team and a whole load of people we can call upon to support that.
Excellent. It would be remiss of us not to address the topic of sustainability when it comes to activations. It's really important. It was, as I've said before on the podcast over the last 12 months or so, something that really sort of reached almost a crescendo of noise in the industry. Loads of good stuff happening just pre-pandemic, and then understandably that crescendo sort of died a little bit. It's great to see that is now creeping back up again as we really are in full flow once again. The topic of sustainability is rightly back at the fore. How are brands approaching the topic of sustainability, even down to sort of the most basic traditional things that you will have seen, right back when you started, of simple handouts, stuff that may be handed out and then thrown away 30 seconds later?
Well, I mean, look, sustainability, it's the buzzword, and sustainability, and quite rightly, it needs to be on the forefront. But again, you need to be as sustainable as you can, but there are practicalities to that as well. It's at the moment, it's quite expensive to activate in a really, really sustainable way. So it's this very, very fine balance of doing as much as you can and being really, really aware. A lot of the festivals now are I think it's Shambhala, for example, carbon neutral footprints, and they're meat free and fish free, and I guess what brands are doing all they can. So no single use, no plastics, no aware of their waste, aware of their carbon footprints, and just being aware. And it's we're only, I think we're just touching the surface of it, but I think brands are more and more aware of it. And I think as we do more and more, it will get better and better. It will then become more cost effective as well, to be able to activate in a pure sustainable way. And I think it is really, really important, and it's something that we look at all of our projects, festivals or not. It's how can we deliver this in the most sustainable way from an event side, but also how we operate as a business as well.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of loops back a little bit into the technology conversation when you mentioned things like QR codes, and I was grinning slightly when you said that, because I've said almost the same thing about QR codes. They've been around for ages, and nobody is really quite sure what to do with them or where to deploy them. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hits. Restaurants open back up a few months later, but you can only eat outside. Oh, great. We can use them to access a menu. Oh, now we can use them to do this. Oh, people can order at their table. And suddenly, from nowhere, everyone knew how to use a QR code.
Yeah.
Suddenly, and which is a great thing. And I suppose just looping that sustainability topic background, that's very much where I suppose elements of technology can play their part.
Yeah, absolutely. The QR code is I'm a big fan of those, and how you can utilize them for, as you said, for menus, for engagement, for tracking, for all sorts of clever ways. And I said, it's not new technology.
No.
And it's not expensive either, which also helps.
Absolutely. And I guess it's like any sort of technology. Some of the best stuff has been around for it does tend to be around for a while, and then suddenly there's something that instigates a boom in whatever it is, and that will go on forever, I'm sure. We're getting towards the end of time on today's episode, Adam, but before we go, I know that you know, a lot of the time, agencies and organizations like yours will work closely with clients, but not necessarily on a secretive basis, but, you know, there will be a level of confidentiality involved in that process. But are you able to give us an insight into some of the stuff that you may be working on this summer? You don't necessarily need to name the brands. It would be great if you could, but
Yeah,
what are you working on that's
we're working
exciting?
with some well-known drinks brands on activations across multiple festivals. Some are very heavily sustainability based, which which will be really engaging, really fun, and you know the brand itself is rooted in sustainability. I guess at this, I'm not going to mention any any names, but
Sure.
anyway, the brand's rooted in sustainability. And the activation is rooted in that as well, which is really, you know, it's got a really rich story to be able to tell. And we're working with other brands where, where it's just, come on, it's fun, it's energetic, it's, as I said, it's sort of programmed music, programmed stages. And then we're doing, you know, we've got it. Why I love what I do is because it is so varied. And we're all over the place. You know, we're at Secret Garden Party, we're at Pride Festival, we're at Kendall Calling, All Points East, all these really fun places. I haven't been to a festival in years, so I'm looking forward to putting some wellies on.
I was just about to ask you, have you had to sort of rummage around at the back of the shed or in the attic and dig out all the stuff that maybe hasn't seen the light of day in a couple of years?
Yep, I have. My wife's very jealous. I think she'd like to come with.
Well, it's work, it's business.
It is work, absolutely.
It is business. We've been talking on the podcast today to Mr. Adam Goodman. Adam is the MD at ACA Live, talking a little bit about how brands are coming back with a bit of a boogie to this festival season and some of the stuff that they're going to be doing and some of the stuff that maybe some festival goers will be seeing this coming summer. If you want to find a little bit more about what Adam and the team at ACA Live are up to, acalive.co.uk is the place to go to. You can go on their website and, go from there. I don't need to tell anybody how to use a website. I'm sure I'd be very surprised if somebody's managed to stumble across a podcast and doesn't know how to use a website. Go on there and find out what they're up to. Adam, great to have you on the show today. Real pleasure speaking to you for the first time. And I've no doubt that that's it. You've ticked the first time box now. You will now be known as a returning guest when we see you in future.
Thanks very much, James.
If you are listening to this podcast on one of your podcast platforms via audio only, don't forget that you can go over to eventindustrynews.com and check out video versions of all of these podcasts, as well as the latest news, features, supplements, and of course, all of those supplier directories if you are looking for anything within the events industry for your own event. If you are already on the website and you're watching this today, a very warm welcome to you. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget that you can listen to audio only versions of all of our Event Industry News podcasts just by going to wherever you get your audio podcasts from and searching for Event Industry News. It brings us to the end of today's episode. Our thanks once again to our guest today, Mr. Adam Goodman from ACA Live. My name's James Dickson. We'll see you on the next edition. Goodbye, everybody.